He is the former GM of the New York Mets. He's all over MLB Network Radio, Baseball Insider, MLB Network. He's Steve Phillips, joining us on the home of the Rangers on Shan and RJ 105.3 The Fan. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to be with you guys.
What are you thinking this morning if you are Chris Young after what's been happening with this recent slide and what just happened yesterday to close out the Red Sox series?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a little concerned, and yet you understand that this is just what happens in baseball. I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays, who seemed unbeatable all year, have lost 5 games in a row right now. They're losing at home, which is something they've not done. And, this game is just, it's so unpredictable, and what goes up does come down at some point, and what's down does go up. I mean, the Oakland A's, believe it or not, won 7 straight games at one point this year, right? And so this is kind of the nature of the game, and sometimes it's who you play. Sometimes it's when you play them. And so, this is just, look, they're still a good team. They've got some holes that they need to fill. I think they need to fortify their bullpen a little bit. And I think they really need to really pay attention to the bullpen, only because I don't know how much to trust the starters, because I didn't trust them all that much coming into the season just because of health. I mean, when they're healthy, they've been good starting pitchers in their careers. But the health factor has been one there. And now with DeGrom down, obviously Dane Dunning's done a great job coming in, filling in. But I do have some concerns. Evaldi's had health history. Heaney's had a health history. And so you may want to add some depth to the rotation, but I think not necessarily impact, but just some additional arms, and then also some depth in the bullpen.
Steve, do you think teams generally overrate how they're playing at the deadline, like how either good or bad, and then wind up overpaying at times for players?
Well, look, my view is that you just don't know about next year. And if I have a chance to be a playoff team this year, then I'm going to go for it. I always had that mentality in New York. If we were a playoff team, I wanted to make moves to help us get there because, you think about the Mets, think about the Padres, think about the Cardinals. They all came into the season with big expectations. Playoff teams last year were going to be even better this year, and they disappeared. Well, maybe they'll make a run to get back into it, but you just don't know what next year is going to bring. And so I think that there's so many teams on the bubble this year that evaluation about whether they're in or out is going to be so interesting as we get close to the deadline. And that's why I think it's going to be a late developing deadline, because so many teams just don't really know who they are yet. But I do think that teams, if I'm always in favor of going for it if you think you have a shot at it. And so I don't know that anybody ever overrates themselves. I think it's just about understanding that if you've got a playoff position within reach, you might as well try to go for it this year, because you just don't know what's going to happen next year.
You brought up the Mets. They've won 5 straight, so I don't know. And they're not, they're 6.5 out of the wild card. Do you see them getting and dealing Scherzer at all, or would you hang on to him?
I don't think they're going to deal him. The idea that he would opt out just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe somebody would give him a 2-year deal, at $30 million per year, and that's better than the $43.5 million for 1 year, maybe. But I don't think the Mets deal him. And look, I think they've won 5 in a row. I think they believe that their best baseball is in front of them. And I will tell you that watching them over the last several days, they look more like the team from last year. I mean, the dugout has come to life. There's some energy there that was lacking all season long. The pitching's getting locked in a little bit. And so just like a year ago, we saw the Phillies go from the end of June where it looked like they were dead. Bryce Harper breaks his hand. He looks like he's out. They're already not in the playoffs. They had changed managers. Next thing you know, they make a run. I think, people believe that they can still do that. And so I think the Mets are going to take the rest of this time before the break this weekend. They're going to take the coming out of the gate next week and really see where they are at that point. And if they can carry the momentum, the worst thing for them is if they win in 5 in a row, they might sweep the weekend, have 8 in a row, and then have an all-star break where they'd want to keep playing, right? They don't want to take time off. But they're going to have to wait until after that, and probably not until about the 25th, 26th, 27th of July, so they really can label who they are.
Former Mets GM Steve Phillips hosts the leadoff spot every weekday morning, 6 to 9 a.m. on the MLB Network radio channel on Sirius. Who do you think will be some of the best starters available, Steve, on the market? And if you're the Rangers, you have starters a higher priority or more bullpen help?
Well, I think that yes is the answer. I look at it and think that definitely bullpen. Will Smith's done a great job at the end of the game, but I would love to get a David Bednar from Pittsburgh for the Rangers, right? I'd love to get a guy like that down there and just get another guy who can save the game in the ninth. And maybe Chapman can grow into that, do that for them too. Although I'd like to have a right-hander that could be that guy for me right now. And so I'd love to fortify the bullpen to shorten the game to where it takes the pressure off your starters that are going deep into the game. That third time through the lineup becomes something that you can try it, but if there's any vulnerability, you've got options every day to bring somebody in there. I mean, this team offensively can score a lot of runs, and so they create some margin for error. But what you want is you want your starters to be locked in too. So I don't know that I would go out and get an impact starting pitcher, but I would like to get some depth protection on the back end. Whether that's you've had Landsman there before, whether that's a Giolito, whether that's a Jack Flaherty from the Cardinals or Jordan Montgomery from the Cardinals, that sort of a guy. But I think that a starter that doesn't necessarily have to be an impact guy, even a Drew Smyly from the Cubs wouldn't be the worst thing. Just to have somebody that predictably can take you 5 innings, not going to shut anybody down, but he's going to give you a chance to win. I'd like that kind of guy just for protection and some depth in the bullpen. So I do think it's both, and I think that they've got enough in the farm system to be able to do that.
You mentioned the farm system there, Steve, and on that topic, when you look at a team like Texas who has played so well, and we're kind of wondering, all right, have they played above their heads a little bit? Are they coming back down to earth at all? What do you think the approach should be for the Rangers in terms of trying to decide how good are we right now and how much of our future capital are we willing to give up to improve this team versus just standing pat and letting some of these high prospects sit another year and get up to the majors?
All right, so I'm a believer that teams really need to evaluate their own talent well and to understand who you have, who you don't, and if you trade somebody, what are your chances of getting burned by it? And so I believe that there are always upper-level prospects that other teams like more than I might like on my own team. I used to say that in some ways prospects get general managers fired. That, so I've got a chance to make the playoffs, and I think to myself, well, boy, I can't give this guy up. I can't give this guy up. And so I don't make the move I need to help my team get to the playoffs. And then the prospect that I was hoping would be a star sort of fades away and fizzles out. And I'm like, why didn't I trade him? And so, and I look at it too, that if I can get a guy and he helps me get to the playoffs, then it was worth me giving up talent in a prospect because here's the thing. When my team made the playoffs in 1999, during the season I had changed coaches and, it was a big controversy, and we were 27-28. And Bobby Valentine at the time said, well, I guess, we'll see if he was not happy with the move and the coaching moves that I made. And he said, I guess we'll look at the next 55 games and decide whether it was a good thing or not. We went 40-15 in the next 55 games. And the owner said to me that was a $30 million decision. He said that the money that we made by being better this year than we were, by getting to the playoffs and the impact that it was going to have on selling tickets next year was a $30 million decision that worked. And so I look at it and think, if I have to give up a prospect and that prospect is going to give me a player that's going to help me get to the playoffs, then that could be a $30 million. And so what, for that extra $30 million, I'll go find another prospect somewhere. I'll buy another prospect somewhere. And so I look at it and think, you give up what you have to give up to get there, even if it's a guy with an upper end. And from your upper end prospects, pick the one that you like the least and make sure he's the guy the other team takes in the deal.
Where is Shohei Ohtani playing on August 2nd?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to say the Angels. I think it will likely be baseball malpractice that he's still there. Like, I mean, they're fading fast. No Mike Trout. And Rendon's down with another injury. They don't have the pitching really to sustain it. And so for my money, I think you have to trade him. I mean, if they were going to sign him to an extension, he would have been signed. And it doesn't seem like there's even some conversation around it. And the likelihood is they're not making the playoffs again. And if I'm Ohtani, I don't really want to go back there again. If I like Los Angeles that much, I might as well go to the Dodgers, and they're going to have money available for him. So I think it's malpractice if they don't trade him, but I'm not sure they're going to trade him. I'm going to say Angels, and I just don't understand why they won't move him. It's the right thing for the organization to do it, and there's no shame in trading him and say, well, we brought him in. We don't want to be the ones who trade him. Why? Trade him and get the prospects. And then if you want to sign him in free agency, go out and sign him and bring him back, because you're going to need those prospects to play with him, because you're going to have to be able to afford younger players because you're going to pay him so much money. So I would trade him, but I don't know that they're going to.
Steve, give us your GM view on his next deal.
Yeah, I think it's going to start with a 6. I think it's going to be $600 million. Yeah, I think it's going to be $600 million. And here's the thing: if it's $550, $575, $500 million, I'm not giving it to him. I don't sign him. Right? I'm not giving him $50 million a year for 10 years, $60 million a year for 10 years. Like, he's a $30 million pitcher, and he's a $30 million hitter. But I can't do that deal. We don't do 10-year deals for pitchers. And so, the likelihood is at the back, and nobody's ever done what he's doing, and it's unbelievable what he's doing. And we've all been shown that it's really impossible what he's doing. And the idea that he's going to do it for another 10 years, I don't know that he can. And so I think it's such a significant risk. I mean, it's one thing to give a position player a contract for $500 million. It's another thing to start doing that for a guy who pitches and hits, and because his arm's going to give out on him at some point. And I hope it doesn't, and I hope I'm wrong, and he has his next 10 years after this are historical. But history says it doesn't work that way. And so it's a risk that I wouldn't be willing to take. Somebody else would sign him. I'd rather sign 3 $20 million players than one player for $60 million.
Steve, what else does he have to do to enter the GOAT discussion?
Oh, I think he's in it. I say it, people, pull back. He needs more years. It's only been a few years. I mean, I get that. But we're seeing something that's like Babe Ruth didn't do anything close to what he's doing. I mean, it's not even close. I mean, Ohtani is the only guy who has struck out 100 batters and hit 120 home runs in a season. He's now done it 3 times. All right, Babe Ruth didn't do that. And so Babe Ruth, was more of a pitcher than a hitter. Then he became a hitter, and he pitched 1 inning or something, 1 game for the Yankees in his time there. So this is absolutely unbelievable. And there's not really words to describe fairly and accurately what he is. And so it's pretty phenomenal. And I'm amazed every day, because I was dubious coming in that anybody would be able to do this, because it's not just the physical part of it, which again I don't know how he does it physically, but it's the mental and emotional part that has to be so draining. And yet he has a smile on his face, and every time he's out there, he's a good teammate. He doesn't seem fatigued in any way. It's absolutely remarkable what he's doing.
Steve, we got a teammate here at 105.3 The Fan by the name of Mike Bassick, somebody that pitched for your New York Mets for a couple of years there, was involved in the Roberto Alomar trade. Basically, I just wanted to give you the chance, the platform, to express how much Mike really hampered your teams those 2 years, and how much you just wish he would have never been with the team.
I mean, unbelievable. I mean, listen, people don't know this, but Bassick was the main player in the deal. Robbie Alomar was the throw-in.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Bassick was the target of that trade. We sort of camouflaged it with interest in Alomar, but we gave up all those prospects who listen, Bassick was the key factor there going after it. And then he was so underwhelming when we got him that he didn't last very long with us. And Alomar was somewhat underwhelming too. So Bassick, so what we did, we thought at some point Bassick might give up a record-setting home run somewhere along the way. Which is why we really targeted him as well. Figured, we want pitchers who are going to set records. Even if they're sort of the dubious records, we want that guy.
You just made 4 promos for the station. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Steve. We hope to have you on again. Enjoy the weekend.
Okay, guys, we'll see you. Thanks.